Welcome to the Tarot Tapestry, a weaving of self-discovery, where three tarot mavens put their heads and hearts together to offer their wisdom and insights about the tarot. We hope that you find this helpful in your personal journey to self-discovery and growth.
Join us as we explore ways to use tarot for self-reflection and self-correction.
Together, we'll discover new ways to use tarot to weave threads of understanding into the tapestry of your life.
Hi, I'm Angie.
I'm Kate.
And I'm Linda. And this is the Tarot Tapestry with the Tarot Trio.
So I actually was so worried that I wasn't going to have anything to say about this card today. Like I was this morning, I woke up and I was still stumped. I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. So before my practice today, I pulled the High Priestess out and I decided to pull a card along with it just to kind of see like what, because, you know, I like the general terms I think of are intuition and, you know, receptivity and kind of a like giving a lot of credence to what you intuit about a certain situation. And then I pulled the Two of Swords to go along with it.
Ooh.
And during my practice, I just kind of went down this rabbit hole about how all the twos are similar and they all show like so much effort. I included the Justice card in this because what started me off was thinking about the pillars that she sits between. And it's a quick Google search. One means Hakim, which is, and it's so much deeper than this, I know. And the other is Boaz. They're Hebrew.
Biblical people, aren't they?
Yeah,
Boaz wasn't Boaz the one that Ruth was married to, or
I have no idea.
I think so. You know,
if that knowledge ever existed in my head, it is long gone.
Yeah.
But one of them means he or it. There's strength in he or it, and the other is oh my gosh, I wrote it down. I will find it eventually. But anyway, and then that got me thinking how they're all in between, like signs of structure, and even in all of the other suits, you know, everyone is between symbols of their suit, except for the cups, where the people are kind of the structure of the emotion, right? And that just made my head go kabang. And this is how it's kind of showing up for me right now in my life, is that I think I mentioned that I was getting some readings over the past few months, and they were all from different practitioners who came at my question from their own perspectives and levels and areas of expertise. And it was just so very affirming of what I've been working with. And I just, their basic message, all of them, was for me to put a little more structure around all of the creative things that I'm kind of pursuing, creative and more esoteric things. Like, you know, this meeting up every week is structure for me around making sure that I give some attention to this thing that is important to me, that I keep saying is important to me, like put my money where my mouth is, sort of show up and have a conversation. And yeah, and I've been doing a lot of yoga training this year and like getting my house in order so that the basic daily stuff doesn't have to be thought about too hard every day, so that I'm not turning and kind of getting lost in that and like feeling stressed out about it. So that is how the High Priestess is showing up for me right now. And I think I would tell like a seeker who came to me and got these cards to think about, well, like, what are you waiting to happen, or what are you avoiding deciding on? And it's, you know, with the High Priestess there, it's probably something that's pretty big, but also something that you've probably seen coming, whether you want to admit it or not. I know the Two of Swords isn't a good card for everybody, but it can be just, I need a minute. Just leave me alone for a minute and let me think this through. and that it's okay that somebody looking at you thinks that you're not really doing all that much, because what you're doing is very important. You're deciding something that's going to have a long-term effect, possibly, on whatever it is you came to the tarot questioning. So that was a lot for one day for me. And so, yeah, I'm definitely going to be incorporating my tarot more with my practice, because it just kind of gets me out of my day-to-day head, I guess, and into my more high priestess kind of side, my more intuitive. I can be patient. I can cast the spell like in the magician, or like on my mat when I do these practices, and then I can wait and see what happens and not try to be so worried that, like, I'm not doing enough. And, I've worked really hard, and some of it's been very difficult over the past few months, like emotionally. But I'm coming out on the other side now, I feel like, and I kind of, one of the things that came to me was that you can't get any traction without resistance. You can't make progress if you just, unless you're, on a sled
you're just spinning on
like
the ice.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that was my high priestess. I don't know.
You know what? I love how you were talking about the high priestess. And I love how you were incorporating what she represents into all of the things that you're working on in your life. And I think even with your yoga practice that you have been working on for many, many years, to me, that is also part of what the high priestess does, right? She takes those moments where she's still and she is like contemplating, and she's thinking, and she's going within. And, when you do yoga, that's a lot of going within. Like, you can't really get more going within, you know, um, outside of doing yoga or some type of meditation, and I also see how you are very in tune with things in your life that have challenged you, and how you're tackling those challenges, and that's all part of the high priestess. It's all about going within and revealing those secrets and those mysteries that have been keeping you from fulfilling your dreams, that have been keeping you from truly connecting with your spirituality, and it was funny because as I was thinking about the high priestess, and I see her as a highly spiritual person. And then I started to think, okay, so I use this word spirituality, but what does it really mean to me? And as I started to think about it, it was like, well, for me, it is connecting to my higher self. It is connecting to my inner truth, and how when I do that and I make these changes in my life, then I become a happier person. Then I become more content. Then I can live my life in a way that is like, what? I am doing the things that make me happy. And to me, that kind of like puts you at a higher energetic level than maybe some of the other people around you. It's like raising your vibration, which you hear that a lot, right? Raising your vibration. And in order to do that, you have to be able, like what you were talking about, you have to be able to go within and understand why things are challenging for you. Why are you being resistant? Why are these things like bouncing off of you? Like, what is going on here? Because as you conquer those, then it opens up other doors for you to, maneuver through life. So I love that. I love how you talked about that.
Thank you. Yeah, it was a really big, like, ta-da moment in my head. It was a big tarot moment for me today. And because at first, I mean, all week I've really been like, I don't really have anything interesting to say about this card. And then, you know, I'm not saying that all of the realizations I came to are brand new and haven't already been, you know, had by people with more experience and more uh who have had more time to study and understand this, but I just thought it was like a really cool thing to go down a bit of a rabbit hole. And there's so much more. Like I wrote this big long thing about it, so I'll probably keep bugging you guys about it in the future.
No problem. It's a major
That's
arcana,
okay.
right? It's supposed to span across your lifetime, right? It's one
That's
of those
right.
major things that you slowly build upon as you go through life. You know, nobody is supposed to get it right away. Like it
Mhm.
just doesn't. And it was funny because I can't remember where I read it or where I heard it, but they were talking about how when you're on this path of finding yourself or on this path of exploring your authentic or your higher self or your spirituality, it doesn't end. It goes on. Like there's never that final day where you're going to stand there and go, hallelujah, you know, everything is perfect, I don't need to do anything. It's like you continuously work on yourself. You're constantly working and improving, and doing things a little differently and changing. It's a lifelong thing that just, it doesn't end. Like there's no end point, you know, to it. And
Right.
I think that's where the patience comes in, right? You have to understand that in order for these things, in order to get the outcome that you want, you have to work and you have to be patient, because the things worth waiting for are going to take a while to happen, you know.
And also, I like the high, you know, a high priestess. You don't just wake up one day and decide, I'm going to be a high priestess. There's, you know, just like being a magician, a successful magician, or someone who can cast a, you know, an effective spell. There's a lot of work and study that goes into it. And I really like that you can see in at least in the, I just use the, you know, Rider-Waite Smith. She's got her eyes open, she's looking straight forward. She's got all of the experience that she's learned from all the other times she's tried this behind her. So she knows what to look for. She knows what success looks like, and she knows probably the missteps that she made last time she tried, you know, which is a big thing to learn in life, is how to learn from your mistakes. And even if they were really horrible things that, you know, to understand what, why you did that and why you wouldn't want to do it again. So yeah, I had a lot of time with the twos today. Oh, and I also decided that the Queen of Swords is the child of the High Priestess and Justice. Like she's got the High
Oh,
Priestess intuition and ability to read the room or situation or person, and Justice's bullshit detector.
yes.
And she's about as patient with, you know, shenanigans and nonsense as um, balanced justice ought to be. So
Linda, do you want to
Well,
um
I kind of was in the same situation as Angie was earlier or last week when I knew that we were going to be talking about that card this week. So I did some reading up on it. I went through Maria's book, that chapter, and I was reading in my two. I have the Tarot for Yourself by Greer, but I also have the Tarot Reversals. But anyway, so today I pulled out four different cards, four different decks, and I picked Golden Art Nouveau, which is pretty standard. The interesting thing I just realized when I'm looking at that scroll, I can't tell if it says Torah. It looks like it says Torah, but I don't know if that's true or not. But a lot of kind of biblical references in this card. But I do like the crescent moon down here, because, and then the moon kind of headdress that she's wearing, which is interesting because then, of course, I had to pull out my Osho Zen and very similar, but really different at the same time. So crescent moon kind of headdress, but maybe that's coming out of the third eye. It's called Inner Voice. And then on the side, other side, there are two dolphins going in two different directions and water. And then, the ether up here. And this deck, there's so many of the cards that just look like old movie stars. The style of it. But again, the alpha and omega, the clouds here in the face and the sun, and then down here it's really small, but it's kind of the cosmos and stars. And then I pulled out the Hush Tarot, which is really interesting. This particular drawing looks really a lot to me like an actress that I like, whose name is Bellamy Young, and she played on Scandal and a few other things. But this card just looks like her, which is always kind of a shock when I turn it over. And the thing around her wrist, there's a ribbon around her wrist that has a quotation, and I took a picture of it because it's from Catherine the Great. It says, "I may be kindly, I am ordinarily gentle, but in my line of business, I am obliged to will terribly what I will at all." So
wow.
I also think of the High Priestess. There's a classic book about, I guess, Wicca and paganism called Drawing Down the Moon. That was written, I guess it was written maybe in the 70s or 80s. And it was kind of a look, kind of a scholarly look at Wicca and paganism. But when the High Priestess of a group, I don't think they call it a coven in Wicca, but anyway, of the group, they do their ceremonies. And if they're doing it outside or whatever, they draw down the energy of the moon to be. So basically they become the moon, they become with the cosmos and speak, whatever they speak is supposed to be the voice of the cosmos speaking through them. And that's kind of what I think of with the High Priestess. I think of her, maybe in a grove of trees at night on a hill, looking up at the moon, drawing down that power into herself, and then using that power for whatever purpose that maybe it was a purpose that the coven had or the group had, or maybe it was something that she needs to do solitarily, or for her own benefit. I don't think it's obviously whenever you draw down power for anything you can use it negatively, but I think the High Priestess generally tries to use her powers for good. But I think there's a lot of power. There is a lot of power there that I hadn't really thought about before, like you, Angie. I just kind of, because I don't draw that card. I haven't drawn that card much at all. I almost never draw that card, so I haven't really thought about it. And but looking at this, it's like, and it is about, your internal power, your internal knowing, your internal truth, and using your powers for good. The negative side is being very cold and detached and doing things for negative reasons, or for just to have the power, and not share it or whatever. But yeah, so
it's like waiting for a message, right?
Right.
Kind of, and not getting in the way of the message. Like,
yes.
Reverse, this could be like you're gaslighting yourself a lot of the time. And the High Priestess in her most benefic presentation, I think, is she knows how to discern between something that is a real concern that you absolutely should do something about in the mundane world,
right,
and something that is like, okay, I know, but you're just
has to play out
scary stories.
Yeah, it just has to play out,
that
or
might be
whatever.
something that could happen, but let's not. And I don't mean like all love and light or anything. I just mean understanding that we often find what we're looking for especially when we're as close to manifesting something as you seem to be in the High Priestess. You know,
Right.
we can mess it up. She's a vessel, but she's not a passive vessel. She decides what gets to get through the veil and what has to stay. What's a big no thanks, you know?
Right. So the commentary in the Osho Zen book, it says the inner voice speaks not in words, but in the wordless language of the heart. It is like an oracle who only speaks the truth. If it had a face, it would be the face at the center of this card, alert, watchful, and able to accept both the dark and the light, symbolized by the two hands holding the crystal. The crystal itself represents the clarity that comes from transcending all dualities. The inner voice can also be playful as it dives deep into the emotions and emerges again to soar towards the sky like two dolphins dancing in the waters of life. It is connected with the cosmos through the crescent moon crown and the earth as represented by the green leaves on the figure's kimono. There are times in our lives when too many voices seem to be pulling us this way and that. Our very confusion in such situations is a reminder to seek silence and centering within. Only then are we able to hear our truth. And I think that the Two of Swords that you pulled is very much like that because, you know, she's sitting quietly in front of the water. She's covered her eyes. It's like she's trying to eliminate outside stimuli so that she can just think about what she needs to do. And yeah, so that's really cool.
I love that. I love the connection of the High Priestess with the moon. So one of the cards that I love is in the Anna Kay Tarot. She's sitting there and she's like looking into the sky and she's watching the phases of the moon, right? The four major phases of the moon. And she's just sitting there so peacefully, so still, so comfortable in like the darkness, so comfortable in watching the moon, so comfortable in the light that the moon reflects back to you, you know. And I was thinking about, and Angie, you had brought it up about like manifesting, right? So when I think about the moon, I think about cycles, right? And I think about time and how, you know, time is not linear. Time is like cyclical. And, you know, when you, I'm trying to get I had written a bunch of notes about this. I was so like intrigued with the whole idea of the moon connected to the High Priestess, connected to working on how we change and how that change helps us to grow, and how the moon starts off, you know, dark, goes to full, and then it goes back again. And it's like this whole cycle. And it's sort of like what happens when you are working with the High Priestess. It's like you need to get deep in there, right? And you need that silence, that stillness, in order for these ideas, like, right, to listen to what your gut and your knowing and your wisdom is telling you, and allowing yourself to hear it, you know. And then it grows from there, right? That's like the seed that's planted in your head. Okay, now I need to work on this. I need to nurture it. I need to understand it, you know, and I need to do something with it, you know. And that's how we grow. And I just loved, you know, seeing that with the moon. And then, you know, the other deck that I was using that I just been so attracted to lately is oh my
Light Seers.
Goodness. Yeah,
Light
thank you very
Seers.
much, Linda. Thank you. Is the Light Seer. And I love it because it kind of reminded me of the cards that you pulled, Linda, where it's like up in the ethers, because that's the like the universe there, and her
Right.
eyes are closed, right? And she's in this very meditative, contemplative, still going within state. And I just love that. And I loved looking at her as like one of the words, the descriptions was she's the keeper of the secrets, right? Like she holds your secrets. Like we all have secrets, And it's not that it's secrets like it's bad because I did something wrong and I need to, hide what I did because I don't want anybody to know about it. But it's like as you live your life, things happen, life happens, and it affects us, and sometimes we remember them and sometimes we don't. And those things that we don't remember, those things that we're not conscious of, those are our secrets. Those are our mysteries that living our life, one of our goals should be to uncover those mysteries, right? How can I uncover these mysteries so that I can be a more fulfilled person in my life? How can I do this to make others around me feel good? How can I use what I'm learning to help me deal with things better when they come up? I just like, I was reading this just the other day and I'm like writing all these notes for like 4 days and I just kept getting more and more. And I'm like, oh my God, I got to stop this because it's like too much to do.
It's a
And then
thesis.
it's that's exactly, I'm pretty sure that we could write a thesis on it, on every single major arcana card.
Definitely.
But the other thing I was thinking about is like me personally, like how have I used the energy of the High Priestess? And I think so much goes back to when I became sober, right? So prior, I'm going to say about a year before I finally decided to get sober, I had that feeling. I had words, I had dialogue with my inner self telling me, you have to stop. You have to stop because if you don't, something bad is going to happen. And I kept ignoring it. I would hear it and then I'd push it down and I wouldn't listen to it. And that also like you were talking, Angie, I don't remember the specific words you used, but you were talking how we'll just ignore it or how we gaslight ourselves and such. And that's exactly what I did. But I give myself credit because I actually listened and I needed to hear it over and over and over again. And that's the other beauty, is that it doesn't let it go, right? It keeps at you because it's that important, because it's something that cannot be put off for too much longer, because your inner knowing knows, right? They know what is happening with you. They know how much you can handle, how much you can do. And it's there to protect you, right? It's there to help keep you safe, right? For safety. And that's also part of the moon, right? The attachment of the moon to the High Priestess is this idea of keeping yourself safe. And sometimes we need that help from deep within to help us see that we're not safe right now and you need to do something about it.
It's like when people say to women who are in a bad situation, well, why don't you just leave? I mean, and maybe they're thinking about leaving. Maybe they haven't gotten there yet. But I know from my own experience that I couldn't leave until I had certain things in place. I couldn't just walk out the door, and not have anything like to keep me safe or to whatever, and sometimes you're in a place where you deep down know that something has to change, but like you said, you're not ready. And in after that, when people would talk about situations that they had come across or something in the news or whatever, I said, look, you don't know what this person is doing. They may be getting ready to do something. But they have to keep it quiet. They have to keep it under wraps, and they don't owe you behavior that you think they should do. They have to do it according to their schedule, to their readiness, and their situation. So just back off and quit judging people. But yeah, exactly. I think that a lot of times we do know what we're supposed to do or what we need to do in certain situations, but it's just not the right time. It hasn't evolved. It hasn't ripened yet. And you just need to keep keep working it on in the back of your mind, keep working on it, letting it percolate, and just until it comes forward. And like you said, you got to a point after about a year and you were ready.
Yeah, absolutely. It
Also,
takes
you have to find, I'm sorry, you just have to find a place where you can be still enough to listen and to understand. Like Kate was saying, I have to hear things 1,000 times. And the universe is like, hey, I can do this forever. Are you tired of it yet?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like
Yeah.
you
So
need that.
I pulled
A lot of the times we need that constant reminder about things, right? Like, and if you think about it, like habits form when you are doing things over and over and over and over and over again. And it's very difficult to break a habit, right? Because the new thing that you're doing needs to happen over and over. And I think there's like some statistic on the number of times that something needs to be repeated before
40
it
days.
becomes,
I was going to say 30
days.
30 days, 40 days, something like that. And you have to consciously do it.
Mm-hmm.
You have to consciously do it enough to where it becomes unconscious.
And and you have to be conscious enough to understand that, any habit is going to be uncomfortable to break. And you have to have the patience with yourself and the compassion for yourself to understand that you're not going to be at your most productive for a few days while you adjust physically to the new way of being, and to give yourself space and quiet time. Sacred space and quiet time, I think, are such privileges that not enough of us who could take advantage of it actually take advantage of it.
Exactly, because there are plenty of people in this world who have never known what it's like to have space and quiet time because of their living circumstances. And that's just, to me, that's just tragic. That's tragic that they have no place to be quiet.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
I pulled another card, as Angie did while you were talking, Kate. And I pulled the 7, Major Arcana 7 in Osho Zen is awareness. Chariot, I think, in other decks. But this is really interesting because it shows the veil coming aside. And the commentary is interesting too, because, and I guess I probably shouldn't read it, but I think it's better than I could paraphrase anyway. The awareness that is growing in you now is not the result of any conscious doing, nor do you need to struggle to make something happen. Any sense you might have had that you've been groping in the dark is dissolving now or will be dissolving soon. Let yourself settle and remember that deep inside you are a witness, eternally silent, aware, and unchanged. A channel is now opening from the circumference of activity to that center of witnessing. It will help you become detached, and a new awareness will lift the veil from your eyes.
Ooh, that's like powerful.
And that's stuff. Really like what you were talking about, with yourself. You kept hearing that, but which was like the circumference of activity, but you had to have that time. You had to have that stillness and let it come forward and really work to just say, okay, now is the time I see that I just have to stop doing this. And now is the time to begin that. And now is the time to get sober.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like a mental preparation for the actions that you actually have to take, because you play it out in your head. You're like, okay, well, in order for me to do this, I have to do this, and then I'm going to feel this way, and I don't really want to feel this way. And like you go through like all of this stuff in your head until you're ready to say, okay, you know what? I have enough of that inner strength in me to do this. I can do it. And then you go and do it. And that kind of reminds me of the chariot, like what you're saying. It's like that channel is finally open where now I can go and take that action. Like I'm no longer still. And they do refer to the High Priestess as she's like the opposite of the magician, right? The magician is very active and she's a bit more passive in that she does a lot of listening and contemplating.
But
And such.
she's gathering. It's like she's gathering.
Yes.
You know?
Yes, absolutely. She's gathering all that information. She's observing, she's listening, she's absorbing it. She's processing it all, and then it's like, okay, now I'm ready to take action. So now here I go. I'm jumping in my chariot, and and the chariot is like associated with water, right? And your emotions. So my emotions have allowed me, right, to say, okay, boom, we can go and take, I know it's going to be hard, but I am ready emotionally to
I've prepared
tackle.
myself. Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like,
yeah.
I know in the RWS, the next card is the priestess, and she's usually interpreted as being pregnant. And
the Empress.
The Empress. Yeah. What did I say?
Priestess.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So the Empress is often interpreted as being a pregnant woman, and like the High Priestess is the card of where, and not just with pregnancy, but where you decide, am I going to do this or am I not? Just like Kate was saying.
Right.
And if it's no, I'm not, like, it's okay. It's this is your quiet space, your quiet time, your sacred space. This is where you get to decide whether or not you're going to take this on. Whether it's, an actual human being, or like a big work project or a big creative project, or any kind of thing that you understand you've studied for, or you've prepared for, or maybe you've been taken surprise by, but you get like that little bit of time anyway to decide whether or not this is for you, or do you need to go back and do some more study before you do a smaller thing, or it's so yeah, I thought of that.
Interesting.
Yeah,
go ahead, Linda, go.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, so I have a co-teacher who just turned 29. And for her birthday, she asked me to do a birthday spread for her. So I did. I did a 12-card birthday spread. It was very in-depth. And the card that represented her goals for the next 12 months was the High Priestess. And I really, at first when I saw it, I was like, oh, what is this? What is this? I don't know. Right? Because that's how I just get. Every card comes up, if I don't know it very well, I'm like, I get all panicky that I can't use it. But anyway, so as I was thinking about it, I'm like, and knowing her, I remember when she turned 29 or approaching her birthday, she would be like, oh, I can't be a kid anymore. This means I'm going to be an adult now, and she's very like, she's an adult. I mean, she may not see herself as an adult, but she is an adult, but she's very much like a kid. Like, she loves Walt Disney, and she loves all of these, all the young kid, all of our students that love like Mario and the superheroes and all of these characters. She loves them. She's seen all the movies. She can talk to them. And when she's like, oh my God, this is my last year of being a kid, I now have to actually become an adult. And she lives on her own. She pays her own rent. She's doing all of this. But I think for her, she sees it as this is the last year of this decade, right? So next year, she's entering into another decade, which in many people's eyes is I'm going into another stage of life. And for her, that stage of life is, I'm getting a little older. I have to set some priorities. I'm going to be moving into a different place with somebody else. I have to worry about my man, like all of these, what we would consider adult things that you have to worry about. She's starting. So I was like, the High Priestess was perfect for her, because she's basically saying, okay, over the next year, because you have one more year before you turn 30, is to really take this time and think about, what is it that you really want? What might be preventing you from getting it? And then what can you do to help you get it? And just
also, why do you think that you have to give up the things that you like now because you've reached a certain age?
Right. So I get it, because I know, like, for myself, when I turned 50, like that was huge. Like to me, 50 was like, oh my God, like I'm 50, like I can't even describe it in words, but it's kind of like I'm no longer 40. And it's just like, and it's also societal influences, right? It also
Yeah, for
like what
sure.
society says and such. But I just thought it was like a perfect card for her to really embrace and think about,
Yeah,
how do you want your 30s to be? Like, what is
exactly.
it that you want to something new that you want to do? What is it from your past that you want to hold on to? And how can you incorporate this in your life? I just thought that was funny. I just wanted to share that.
No,
That's so,
that was great.
Yeah.
I love that. And like, also, what do you want to keep? What are you going to keep? There's already good stuff in your life. You don't have to give up everything that you think is fun because you don't think
Right.
it's grown up enough.
I
I
know.
play,
I
I'm
know.
50. I play video games and, you know,
Yeah, when I got divorced, how old was I when I got divorced? I was 29 when I got divorced. And I remember sitting in my mom's kitchen and just saying to her, you know what? I am never, ever again going to apologize for liking the things that I like. I like to go to science fiction conventions. I like to read weird books. I like strange movies. I like, things that other people think are strange. I don't care. I'm no longer apologizing. I'm no longer justifying the fact that I liked it. It's like, I like doing it. I'm going to do it. Fuck you. you know? and it's like, why should I have to behave a certain way or like certain things just because I'm a certain age? I don't understand that.
it took me a while to get there, but I think I am really like I thought I
Yeah,
was,
I mean it's an
but
ongoing
I wasn't.
process. It didn't just, I just didn't have a bolt from the sky and all of a sudden I was all fine with it. But that was a big, that declaration out into the universe was a big starting point for that.
Yeah, and also
Yeah.
like we talked about earlier, you have to have resistance to get traction in life. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't always have to be super uncomfortable, but sometimes it is. And sometimes it is because we've been resisting the message for so
yeah,
long
yeah,
that like I'm trying now. Just the biggest lesson I have learned over the past decade studying yoga and meditating and doing energy work is the longer you put something off, the worse it will be. So now I just walk like right into like I see something and I'm just like, fine, I have to go deal with this right now, or it's going to be. And that too is a privilege because I couldn't do it. You can't do it when you've got little kids and a job and
yeah,
bills and all of
yeah,
the whole life thing. So what I want to say to anybody who's feeling very frustrated and is to just give yourself a little bit of a break. 5 minutes a day. You can do it while you brush your teeth, just to think of how do I feel? How do I feel today?
yeah,
Like that's I think the high priestess, even though she's not freaking out or getting up and running around every time she has an emotion, doesn't mean she's not having emotions, everybody.
Mhm.
She's thinking very hard and she's using her focus and her energy. And just because it doesn't look like she's doing much doesn't mean she's not.
right.
And
I used to get it all the time from Glenna, my ex, because I'd go downstairs and if you went down there and looked at what I was doing, I was sitting at a desk listening. Probably my face was screwed up in a weird expression, listening and typing. But according to her, it was like she couldn't understand why I'd get off work and I'd be so tired. And she was like, "You didn't do anything. You haven't done anything." I'm like, "You have no idea what I have done. My brain has been on fire for 12 hours and I'm exhausted."
I've been making sure I'm 98% perfect for the past 12 hours so I don't get fired.
Exactly. Exactly. So, in the meantime, she was out pulling weeds and cleaning the gutters and painting the house and, doing all this stuff. And that's great. That's wonderful. But, when I worked in the hotel business and I had run around 50,000 square feet of hotel for 12 hours and I would come home, I would be physically tired, but it was actually a better feeling than being mentally exhausted. and not physically tired, because I had not done much with my body. True, that's true. But, the mental work was just over the top.
That is like a misconception, I think, quite a few people had, is this idea that like mental exhaustion is like not a thing.
Not a
Like,
thing. Yeah, trust
yeah,
me,
like
it's a thing.
if you, I know it is because I feel it every day I come home
Well,
from
and
work.
you have probably
I'm
both,
mentally,
because you're up in front of a classroom and you're running around after kids and you're having to do things with your body and write on the board and do stuff. So you are doing the physical things. I mean, you may not be, lifting weights or whatever, but I'm sure there are times, well, like you had that altercation with that kid,
yeah. And I
and
mean, even when I come home, like I'll be mentally exhausted, which affects you physically, right? It does affect your energy level, but part of my body wants to do something. Like sometimes I
yeah,
feel like I get this like surges of energy, especially in my legs, that need to do something. But my brain is so like, oh, that I have no mental energy to
yeah,
get myself up and to,
yeah,
I mean, thank God I have a treadmill in my home because that has been
yeah,
my saving grace since COVID is I can like just go on there, I can put headphones on and I can just like walk at any pace that I want.
yeah.
And most of the time that works well. But yeah, I don't think people see that as mental exhaustion,
Yeah.
is just as difficult to deal with as
when
physical
my daughter
exhaustion.
was young, and I had a well, after my divorce and I was living with my parents, I lived in the basement, and there was a room. There was my bedroom, which was my bedroom when I was a kid. So there was a bedroom, there was a little tiny bathroom across it, and then there was a room in the basement that was the full width of the house. So it was a big, like a playroom or a den or whatever you wanted to make in it. And I think at that time my mother had a ping pong table in there, and I had there was a little exercise bike that I think she had gotten, but she never rode. So she put it down there. And I had like an hour to an hour and a half commute back and forth to my job, depending on the traffic. Okay. So I would come home, I would pick up Jessica at daycare, we'd get to the house, and sometimes she'd go hang out with my mom because my mom would be home from work a little bit before me. And but she'd want to be with mommy, of course, and that's understandable. And I finally got her to understand, if she would just let me go downstairs and get on that exercise bicycle for about half an hour. And it was, this was before all the headphones and everything. I had a little boom box with a cassette tape. Let me date myself really, really well here. And I would play some music and I would ride that bicycle and go off, not think about anything. And then I could go upstairs and be present, and I could pay attention to her, and I could, and thank goodness my mother, she and my mother were really close. And that was one of the reasons that, I stayed with my parents for that long, because I didn't have a really good relationship with my grandmother that was living. My other grandmother died before I was born. And I wanted her to have a relationship. And they were like this, I was in the middle and they were on either side of me. So, I don't regret that at all. But, just a little bit of time to detox, de-stress is just so important. And again, that was a privilege. That was a real privilege that a lot of people in this world do not have. I also think, on the flip side of that, I also think that, here in America, we talk about stress and doing all this stuff that people in other parts of the world don't talk about as much, because I don't think they have it the way we have it.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't. I've been watching some TikTok things about a lot of these people that have left the United States and are living abroad, and they're like, let me tell you what it's like to detox from America.
Oh, yeah. That is too funny. I just have to, I mean, this has nothing to do with what you just said, Linda,
Yeah.
but it's going back to what Angie said about finding like 5 minutes out of your day to sit and like meditate. And the first thing that popped into my head was, well, everybody needs to use the bathroom sometimes for more than just a little tinkle. And, you don't realize, like, if you sitting in there for 5 or 10 minutes, you're by yourself the majority of the time, unless you have little toddlers that might be banging on your door.
Yeah.
But
Or a dog.
that's a great time to sit there and just do some contemplative
Yeah,
work, some
it
thinking.
is.
Yep.
It is.
Or when you take a shower. And a
Yeah.
thing to do too, if you're feeling like antsing your body, a good thing to do is to just bounce up and down.
Mhm.
Just wave your
Yeah,
arms. Like it doesn't matter.
used to have one of those
People are gonna think you're
rebounders, and
crazy.
I gave it away. I wish I hadn't, but I used to do that when I was doing the transcription. About every so often, I would just like, okay, I'm putting the headphones down and just get on my rebounder and bounce up and down for about 5 minutes, and it made a difference.
Yeah, we tell our students to stand up and shake your bodies and like we used to say, like, get your sillies out or get your energy out. And you just stand there and just shake in any way that you want for just like a minute or two and like just get it all out. And it works.
Yeah.
It works.
It
Anything
totally.
that you can do.
We are
Yeah.
energetic beings. Our body is just the densest part of our energy. We're,
That's right.
and they used to think that women who could successfully deliver healthy babies were witches because they figured out that if you wash your hands in between
Yeah.
medical procedures, people do better, and I think that's kind of where they're going to go, where they're going to find, energetic yogic
Cleansing.
work. Like there's a reason they've been around for 5,000 years. It's not
Yeah.
bullshit. It's, it's not woo woo. It's very human.
Yeah.
And it's,
Well, we're all, if you talk to physicists, I mean, our hearts have electric currents, our brains have electric
figure-
current. You do an electrocardiogram, an electroencephalogram. We're electricity, we're energy.
Mhm.
We are. And so to say that you're going to raise your frequency or whatever, some people think you're crazy, but I mean, we all have a frequency.
Mhm.
We have a frequency, so you might as well, in a vibration, everything has a vibration. Just because this cup looks like it's solid does not mean that it's not vibrating intensely in the spaces, in the molecules, but the molecules are just so dense you don't see it. It's an illusion that it's solid. It's actually just molecules of energy.
I think one of the reasons it's not widely studied, and I mean, there are studies, don't get me wrong, but science often doesn't want to look at things that they can't, one, get funding for, like
Yeah.
nobody, and this is a hard thing to wrap your mind around. How do you study something you've never experienced?
Right.
And that's why, yoga is something you have to do to get, it's not about touching your toes or being in an uncomfortable position, although that is, those are things you might
It
try
happens.
to do, or you might not. You don't have to do any, and trying to explain to somebody who is really committed to never trying is just a waste of time. And I think that's another good thing in that the High Priestess does gives a good example for. She's holding the Torah. She's in a sacred place in a temple. And what was I saying? Something
You were
about her.
talking about the High Priestess.
I think it's gone. I think it's gone, you guys.
Oh,
I think menopause brain ate it.
I'm sorry.
I'll remember at 3 o'clock in the morning, sit straight up, might give you a text.
Texas.
Well, if you do remember, let me know, or do it on Zoom and then send it to me, and I can maybe cut and paste it.
Yeah, okay.
I can't do that, so don't do that. No.
Yeah, I won't do that.
Don't do that at all.
I won't do that.
Well, I have to say, for two people who did not really do, or was like a little worried about what they would say, about the High Priestess, I think this was like a really great conversation. I think we did a fabulous job in talking about the High Priestess.
I do too. And I
I
don't
think
think
so.
it's that, I mean, we were still thinking about it. It just took me a whole week for everything to gel in a way that I could get it across in a way that other people could understand. And
exactly. You had to let your inner High Priestess pull all that together for you.
Mm-hmm.
And this is like one of the reasons why I love talking about the cards with other people. Like I can't tell you how much I am learning about these cards so far. by, working on this podcast, right? From like, I
Mhm.
mean, we've only done 3 cards, but I feel like I have learned and experienced so much more just
Mhm.
by talking about it,
Oh yeah.
sharing,
Yeah.
listening to, what you guys say. And it actually makes me feel really good as like a practitioner, like somebody who does this. It's like even helping build my confidence. It's making me, I think what I love about it the most is that it's really making me see how we associate these cards with our everyday lives, how they
Yeah.
show up. And because you can get very philosophical about what each of the cards mean. And I think for me, I kind of had a bit of a grasp on that, but it was always like, okay, so what are the practical applications of this? How do we see this in everyday life or in our daily happenings and
Yeah.
such? So, and it's really helping me to see it differently.
That's really cool.
Yeah, I'm very much enjoying our weekly. Like I said, this is some structure that I needed around my study of this subject. If I, don't have anybody who's expecting me to, have anything to add to a conversation, I'm
Right.
likely to
I
procrastinate.
mean, you can do yoga every day.
Yeah.
You can do yoga, so you're doing that. But yeah, it's hard if you're studying cards or whatever, something like that, and you don't have anybody else to bounce anything off of.
Yep.
Beautiful conversation. Love
Yeah.
this, love this, love this. All right, well, you guys have a great week, and I will see you next Tuesday.
All righty. Bye.
Have a good one.